chosen one. You didn't arrive here by accident, and neither did the name, the presence, the echo of J that found its way into your life when everything else felt uncertain. There is a pattern beneath what you thought was chaos, a design hidden inside what looked like coincidence. You felt it in the quiet moments, in the pauses between your thoughts, in the way your spirit reacted before your mind could explain it. Something about J carried weight, carried meaning, carried a message that did not come from the world, but from somewhere higher, somewhere intentional. You keep trying to explain it away, don't you? You tell yourself it was timing, or luck, or just another person crossing your path, like so many others have before. But deep inside, there is a resistance to that explanation, a knowing that refuses to be silenced. Because not everyone shifts your energy. Not everyone leaves an imprint on your soul. Not everyone awakens something within you that you didn't even know was sleeping. J did not just appear in your life. J interrupted your life. There is a difference between people who accompany your journey and people who alter its direction. J was not there to walk beside you in comfort. J was placed there to awaken, to challenge, to reveal. And revelation is rarely gentle. It shakes you, stretches you, pulls you out of illusions you were once comfortable living in. You thought you were fine before J came along. You thought you understood your path, your purpose, your strength. But then something shifted, something cracked open, and suddenly you could see things you were never meant to ignore again. This is how divine placement works. It does not always arrive wrapped in peace. Sometimes it arrives as confusion, as intensity, as a connection that feels deeper than logic can justify. You tried to make sense of it through your mind, but your mind was never meant to fully understand something that was sent to transform your spirit. J wasn't sent for explanation. J was sent for activation. Think about who you were before. Think about the patterns you were repeating, the limits you had accepted, the truths you had not yet faced. There were things within you that needed to be exposed, and comfort would not have done it. Ease would not have done it. Familiarity would not have done it. It required disruption. It required someone who could mirror parts of you that you avoided, someone who could trigger growth instead of maintaining stagnation. That's why it felt so intense. That's why it didn't feel like anything you had experienced before. Because it wasn't meant to be ordinary. When something is placed by God, it carries purpose beyond your immediate understanding. It moves with intention, even when it looks unpredictable. And you, chosen one, were meant to encounter that intention, not control it. You ask yourself why it affected you so deeply, why it lingered in your thoughts, why it stirred emotions you couldn't name, why it seemed to touch something sacred within you. The answer is simple, but not easy to accept. It was never random. It was aligned with something you are becoming, something you are growing into, something that requires you to see beyond surface-level connections. J came into your life carrying a message, but not one that could be spoken directly. Some messages are lived, not told. Some lessons are felt, not explained. And you felt it, didn't you? In the way your perspective started to shift, in the way your awareness deepened, in the way you began to question things you once accepted without hesitation. You were not meant to stay the same after that encounter. That's the part many people resist. They want divine experiences without transformation. They want meaning without change. But that is not how this works. If something is placed by God, it comes with a demand for growth, for awareness, for elevation. J was not there to complete you. J was there to reveal you, to show you parts of yourself that were hidden beneath fear, beneath doubt, beneath conditioning, to reflect your strength back to you in ways that felt uncomfortable, because you weren't used to seeing yourself that clearly, to push you into a space where you had to confront your own depth, your own power, your own truth. And yes, it may have come with confusion. It may have come with moments where you questioned everything, where you felt pulled in different directions, where clarity seemed just out of reach. But confusion is often the beginning of awakening. It breaks down the false certainty you once held and makes space for something more real to emerge. You were never meant to fully control this connection. That's why it felt like it had a life of its own, like it moved beyond your decisions, beyond your expectations. Because it did. Divine placements operate on a level that does not ask for your permission to exist. They simply arrive, and your role is to respond, to learn, to grow. There is a reason it stays with you. A reason it echoes even when you try to move past it. A reason it continues to surface in your thoughts, in your reflections, in your quiet moments. It is not unfinished business. It is ongoing transformation. You are still becoming because of what J awakened within you. And maybe you didn't recognize it at first. Maybe you focused more on the surface, on the person, the interaction, the emotions. But beneath all of that, something deeper was taking place. Something internal, something spiritual. Something that cannot be measured by ordinary standards. You started seeing yourself differently. You started questioning your limits. You started feeling a pull towards something greater, even if you couldn't fully define it. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. The presence of J was a catalyst, not a conclusion. And catalysts are not always meant to stay forever. Their purpose is to initiate change, to start a process that continues long after the initial contact fades or transforms. That does not make the connection less meaningful. It makes it more purposeful. Because now, you are not who you were before. Now, you carry awareness that you cannot unlearn. Now, you feel things more deeply, see things more clearly, question things more honestly. Now, you are stepping into a version of yourself that requires more truth, more courage, more alignment. And that is the real gift. Not the comfort of the connection, but the transformation it sparked within you. You were chosen to experience that shift, chosen to encounter something that would disrupt your normal patterns and push you towards something greater. Not everyone gets that. Not everyone is ready for that. But you were. And that's why it happened. That's why it felt different. That's why it still matters. Because when something is placed in your life by God, it doesn't leave you the same. It rewrites something within you, something invisible but undeniable. It changes the way you move, the way you think, the way you understand your own path. You are still unfolding that change. You are still discovering what it truly meant. And the more you lean into that understanding, the more you will realize that nothing about it was nothing about it was accidental, nothing about it was misplaced, and nothing about it was wasted. Even the parts that confused you, even the moments that made you question your own judgment, even the silence that followed when you expected clarity to arrive. Chosen one, you have to understand that divine placement does not operate on human timing, and it certainly does not conform to human expectations. What you felt was real, but it was not meant to be controlled by your understanding of how things should unfold. You were being introduced to a higher pattern, one that required you to trust, without having all the answers laid out in front of you. That is uncomfortable, especially for someone who has spent so much time trying to make sense of everything, trying to protect themselves from uncertainty. But growth does not happen in certainty. Growth happens in the space where you are forced to confront the unknown and still choose to move forward. J represented that unknown for you, not just as a person, but as a symbol of everything you were being called to step into. There was something about that connection that felt bigger than the situation itself, something that carried a weight you couldn't quite explain to anyone else. You might have even tried, only to realize that words fell short, that people couldn't fully grasp what you were experiencing, because it wasn't meant for them to understand. It was meant for you to experience. And that experience began to reshape you in ways you didn't immediately notice. It started subtly, a shift in your awareness, a deeper sensitivity to energy, a stronger intuition that began to guide you even when logic tried to pull you in another direction. You began to notice patterns you had ignored before, truths you had avoided, emotions you had suppressed. It was as if something within you had been activated, something that refused to go back to sleep. That is what divine encounters do. They awaken parts of you that have been waiting for the right moment, the right trigger, the right alignment. And once awakened, those parts do not simply disappear. They demand to be acknowledged. They demand to be integrated into who you are becoming. You may have resisted it at first. You may have tried to return to who you were before, to the comfort of familiar thoughts and behaviors. But it didn't feel the same anymore, did it? What once satisfied you now felt incomplete. What once made sense now felt limited, because you had seen beyond it. You had felt beyond it. And once you cross that threshold, there is no true going back. This is where many people become stuck. They recognize that something has changed, but they hesitate to fully embrace that change. They linger between who they were and who they are becoming, unsure of how to move forward. But chosen one, you were never meant to stay in that in-between space. The encounter with J was not just to awaken you, it was to move you, to push you beyond hesitation, to challenge you to step into a version of yourself that aligns with your higher purpose. And that requires courage, because stepping into that version of yourself means letting go of certain attachments, certain beliefs, certain illusions that once felt safe. It means accepting that not everything that enters your life is meant to stay in the way you expect, but everything that enters has a role to play in your evolution. J played that role, whether it was through connection, through distance, through lessons that came easily or lessons that came painfully. The purpose remained the same: transformation. You were being prepared for a level of awareness that demands more from you, prepared for a path that requires authenticity, not performance, prepared for a life that aligns with your true self, not the version of yourself that was shaped by external expectations. And preparation is not always comfortable. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like everything is being rearranged in ways you didn't ask for. But preparation is necessary for elevation. You cannot step into something greater while holding on to everything that kept you small. That is why J felt like both a blessing and a challenge, because it was both. It brought something into your life that expanded you, but it also exposed areas where you needed to grow. It showed you what was possible, but it also revealed what was holding you back. And that duality is what made it so powerful, so unforgettable, so impossible to ignore. You were not meant to forget it. Not because you are meant to hold on to the person, but because you are meant to carry the lesson that you are capable of deeper connection than you once believed. The lesson that your intuition is stronger than you gave it credit for. The lesson that your path is guided by something greater than coincidence. And most importantly, the lesson that you are being shaped into someone who can handle a higher level of purpose. That is what this is really about. Not just the presence of Jay, but the version of you that emerged because of that presence. Take a moment and reflect on that. Who are you now compared to who you were before? What do you see differently? What do you feel more deeply? What truths can you no longer ignore? Those changes did not happen randomly. They were initiated by an experience that was placed in your life with intention. You may not have understood it in the moment. You may have even questioned it, doubted it, tried to rationalize it in ways that made it feel less significant. But significance does not disappear just because you try to minimize it. What is meant to impact you will impact you, regardless of how you try to frame it. And the impact of Jay is still unfolding. It is in the way you approach your future. It is in the way you guard your energy. It is in the way you recognize connections that carry depth versus those that are merely surface level. It is in the way you are no longer willing to settle for less than what aligns with your true self. That is transformation, and transformation is a process, not a single moment. You are still in that process, still learning, still evolving, still uncovering layers of yourself that were hidden before. And each step you take forward is influenced by what you experienced, by what you felt, by what was awakened within you. Nothing was wasted. Not the time, not the emotions, not the questions, not even the uncertainty. Because all of it contributed to who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is someone who moves with greater awareness, greater intention, greater alignment with a purpose that goes beyond ordinary understanding. You are being guided, even when it doesn't feel like it. You are being shaped, even when the process feels unclear. You are being positioned for something that requires the exact growth you have been going through. And one day, the pieces will align in a way that makes sense of everything. Not just intellectually, but deeply, in a way that resonates within your spirit. You will see how each encounter, each shift, each moment of confusion and clarity played a role in leading you to where you are meant to be. And when that realization comes, you won't question why Jay entered your life. You will understand that it had to happen, that it was part of a design you could not fully see at the time, that it was necessary for your evolution. But even now, before that full clarity arrives, you can choose to trust the process. You can choose to honor the impact without needing to control the outcome. You can choose to move forward with the awareness you have gained, instead of staying attached to what has already served its purpose. Because chosen one, your journey does not stop at the moment of awakening. That is only the beginning. There is more ahead of you. More growth, more alignment, more experiences that will continue to shape you into the person you are meant to become. And the presence of Jay was one of the keys that unlocked that path. Not the destination, but the doorway. And now that the door has been opened, you are being called to walk through it, to step fully into the life that is waiting for you on the other side, to embrace the transformation that has already begun, and allow it to carry you forward into something greater than you ever imagined. Into something greater than you ever imagined. And that is where your focus must begin to shift. Not backward toward trying to fully decode every detail of what happened, but forward toward who you are now becoming because it happened. Chosen one, there is a quiet power in accepting that some divine placements are not meant to be held onto in a physical sense, but are meant to be carried within you as spiritual ignition. as a permanent shift in your awareness that changes how you walk through the rest of your life. You have already crossed a threshold. You are no longer the version of yourself who needed that encounter to begin the awakening. Now you are the version who must live with what has been revealed. And that responsibility is sacred. It asks you to move differently, to choose differently, to align yourself with truth, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it requires you to leave behind what once felt familiar. There will be moments when you feel the echo of J. Again, not necessarily as a person, but as a frequency, as a reminder of the depth you are capable of experiencing. And instead of letting that pull you backward into confusion or longing, let it anchor you into clarity. Let it remind you of what you felt when your soul was activated, when your awareness expanded, when you realized that your life is guided by something far greater than chance. Because that realization is the real gift. Not the circumstances, not the form it came in, but the awakening itself. You were chosen to feel that, to recognize it, to be changed by it. And now, you are being called to embody it, to become someone who no longer doubts the significance of what enters your life with intensity and purpose. To trust that when something shakes you at your core, it is not there to break you, but to rebuild you into a higher version of yourself. And as you continue forward, you will begin to notice something even deeper. You are no longer searching in the same way. You are no longer chasing meaning, because meaning has already begun to reveal itself within you. You are no longer questioning your path in the same uncertain tone, because even in moments of doubt, there is a quiet knowing underneath it all. That knowing is your alignment. That knowing is the evidence that what you experienced was real, was purposeful, was placed in your life exactly when it needed to be. And nothing about that can be taken away from you, because it has already become part of who you are. So walk forward with that awareness. Carry it not as a burden of unanswered questions, but as a source of strength, of clarity, of direction. Let it shape your decisions, your boundaries, your standards, your vision for what your life is meant to become. Because now you know that your journey is not random, that your encounters are not meaningless, that even the most confusing moments can carry divine intention. And most importantly, you know that you are not here by accident. You are here as someone who was meant to awaken, to evolve, to step into something greater than the version of yourself that once settled for less understanding, less depth, less truth. The presence of J was one of the moments that pushed you toward that realization, one of the catalysts that set this transformation into motion. But the continuation of that transformation is now in your hands. And as you step forward, with everything you have felt, everything you have learned, everything that has been revealed to you, you begin to understand the deeper truth that was hidden within the experience all along. That what was placed in your life was never just about who came into it, but about who you were being prepared to become. And that becoming is still unfolding, still rising, still guiding you toward a purpose that is far greater than anything you once believed possible.